question comes in as anonymous via live dictation, and they write, when Jesus died, can you please elaborate on his spiritual death?
Well, that's kind of a dual question here because in one sense, Jesus never died. I mean, think about this for a moment. Yes, he died physically when the nails were put through his hands and feet. And yes, he was crucified. That's what Isaiah predicted. That's what the prophet Zechariah predicted. That's what Psalm 22 predicted. God specifically denotes 1,000 years before crucifixion is invented in Psalm 22. 700 years before crucifixion is invented in Isaiah 53, 500 years before crucifixion, before Jesus is crucified in Zechariah. They'll look on him whom they have pierced, which John, by the way, notes. They looked on him whom they had pierced, the Jewish people. They're going to look on him again as the one who is pierced, which he quotes in Zechariah as one who will mourn for an only son. When they looked at him the first time as the one who is pierced, they looked at him in mockery. They'll look at him a second time at his visible return from heaven to earth, and their hearts will be broken because of the Jewish conversion that will happen during that time. And so what we discover is he died physically, but while he's on the cross, in Aramaic, it's Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, literally, my God, why have you forsaken me? And so God the Father and God the Spirit forsook God the Son. He experienced the spiritual, eternal separation that we should know in hell. You say, well, how can he do that in the course of a matter of hours when hell is forever? Because he's infinite. As an infinite person, he could accomplish in a finite period of time what we as finite people would take an eternity to pull off. And that's what he did. And then he committed his spirit to the Lord. His body was laid in a tomb, but his spirit was very much alive. And I just preached a sermon on this, on Christ's descent. The old creeds will read Christ suffered under Pontius Pilate, was dead, buried, descended into hell, and on the third day was raised from the dead. Now, the Roman Catholics' interpretation of descended into hell was he went to hell to suffer. And sadly, John Calvin, I don't have his direct quote, but I read it recently. He said Jesus went into hell to help pay for our sin. That is just so false. John Calvin sadly was confused on a lot of issues. Sadly, because he's under the influence of Augustine, whom he quotes some 4,000 times in his works. You can hardly get past a page in his Institutes without bumping into Augustine. And he said that Augustine was his hero. That's a gross paraphrase, but that's what he says. Augustine believed that Mary never sinned, that she was a perpetual virgin, that unbaptized babies went to hell, and on and on. He had a lot of weird doctrine. And so some of Calvin's doctrine really comes out of Catholicism. You know, he and some other reformers, when they step out of the glue and the muck and the air of Catholicism and they bring the gospel, they still carry a lot of muck on them. And so there was a need for further reformation that some of the reformers, like the Anabaptists, brought, but some, they still had some Catholicism stuck to them, and it's still sticking to some today. Lay all that aside. He descended into hell not to pay for sin. In his spirit, he went on a preaching mission. And when you put it together with Genesis 6, who did he preach to? There was a classification of angels that 2 Peter and Jude tell us, 2 Peter 2 and Jude, they're almost like parallel chapters, but written with different themes in mind, but still both addressing the issue of apostasy. He's addressing a certain class of angels who committed such a heinous sin that the writers of both of those books understood and their readers understood, because they assume it, they don't explain it. And there's a parallel given by Jude to Lot's day, where men left their natural estate, and so some angels left their natural state, committed a heinous crime, and they are in eternal bonds. Those are the only people, so to speak, in the angelic realm who did not hear of Christ's victory, because on the cross he disarmed the rulers and authorities by his precious blood. But there was a class that didn't hear about his victory. So because of the confusion over the descent, historically no one denied the descent into hell. What became an issue is what was the meaning of the descent. And so some creeds began to lift it out, and maybe in a church you grew up in, they didn't have he descended into hell. Some say, well, the Nicene Creed never had it. Well, that's true, but it's writing with an entirely different function. It's not trying to give a pure summary of apostolic doctrine. Of course, the Apostles' Creed is not written by the apostles. It's written by followers to summarize their doctrine. The Nicene Creed is being written to deal with a guy named Arius who said that Jesus was created and that he's not the eternal Son. And so a different era.
Dr. Carl Broggi answers your questions about the Bible and living the Christian life Tuesday mornings at 11 on The Light 88.7 FM and online around the world at wagp.net.